That is news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed tweeted, "Obstacles and challenges will not stop Ethiopia from its aspirations for development and prosperity." He believes challenges can serve as a springboard and transition bridge. Key discoveries, innovative technologies, and problem-solving solutions can be developed in challenging times, the Premier underscored. The Premier implored all citizens to use this time for good to realize Ethiopia's future prosperity. Abiy vowed to end Ethiopia's recurrent challenges by using all possible options, adding that various works will be done for the prosperity of Ethiopia at the grave of Ethiopia's enemies. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen met today with ambassadors of France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Romania, Sweden, and Slovakia in Ethiopia for a briefing on the northern part of the country. Demeke reiterated Ethiopia's effort to explain to the EU Commission and member states about the current situation in Ethiopia, albeit they showed reluctance to accept the facts on the ground. The refusal by the EU and the international community to openly acknowledge the unilateral humanitarian ceasefire extended by the government has also unnecessarily emboldened the TPLF clique, he said. He also expressed Ethiopia's disappointment over the silence of the EU in the face of massive belligerence, murder, and destruction of civilians in Afar and Amhara regions by the clique. He called the recent EU resolution on Ethiopia unbalanced, adding that threatening to impose sanctions on the whole country based on investigations on human rights violations will be unjustified, since the aim should be to take measures against perpetrators of alleged violations. In charting the way forward, he said, Ethiopia would conduct an all-inclusive national dialogue based on a roadmap that has been prepared by the new government. He finally called on the EU and member states to extend their humanitarian air bridge support to the Amhara and Afar regions, besides supporting the sovereignty and integrity of Ethiopia, which is in the best interest of the European Union. The head of Sudan's ruling council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has announced the dissolution of the Transitional Sovereign Council and the government. He announced the enactment of a state of emergency amidst a military coup after the PM's arrest. Thousands of Sudanese people took to the streets of Khartoum in protesting the military coup that threatens the country's shaky progress towards democracy. Alula Teklamariam has more on this.
Tension has been rising for weeks between military and civilian factions sharing power in a fragile transitional government.
Sudan has suffered frequent coups since it gained its independence from Britain and Egypt. In 1956, al-Bashir came to power. In 1989, in one such takeover, which removed the country's last elected government. And similar public grievances brought Abdullah Hamdok and his team to the front line in Sudan's politics. Abdullah Hamdok was appointed as new Prime Minister of Sudan in August 2019, following the removal of Omar Hassan al-Bashir, who ruled the country for 30 years. His new leadership was set to run the country until an election is undertaken within 3 years. Ethiopia voiced solidarity with Sudan in its political transition held in 2019.
بمقدم رسول السلام رئيس وزراء أثيوبيا أبي أحمد وظلت ذات الابتسامة.
It is with great honor that I stand here before you, bearing witness to this momentous day which marks the birth of a new era for this great nation. we are gathered here in celebration of the people of Sudan who have sacrificed greatly to guarantee their freedom. Dearest brothers and sisters of Sudan, the people and government of Ethiopia celebrate with you today. Your victory is our victory in the same way that your pain is our pain. The relationship between Ethiopia and the Sudan, surpassing many years, had been firmly rooted in mutual respect and solidarity.
Sudan has been on edge since a failed coup plot last month unleashed bitter recriminations between military and civilian groups meant to be sharing power following the toppling of the country's longtime leader Omar Hassan al-Bashir. Sudan's military wing announced that it has seized power Monday and dissolving the transitional government hours after troops arrested Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok and other officials. Internet access was widely disrupted and the country's state news channel played patriotic traditional music. Thousands of Sudanese people took the streets of Khartoum in protesting the military coup that threatens the country's shaky progress towards democracy. Following the arrest of Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok and other officials by troops, Burhan stated that the military will oversee the remainder of Sudan's transition to democracy and will hand over to democratically elected government.
In fact, we're going to that statement right now. Let's listen to it.
Who doesn't believe in peace and justice. That's why when the December revolutionaries said their slogans and thousands of them stood in front of the General Command of the armed forces responded positively and decided to work to achieve the aspiration of the people, to achieve the aspiration of the nation, justice, peace and freedom. Because we are quite convinced that the Sudanese people deserve a nation that they can practice and see these slogans and these big names in the nation until the moment we deliver power to a civilian government.
Since al-Bashir was forced from power, Sudan has worked to slowly rid itself of the international pariah status it held under the autocrat. The country was removed from the United States state supporter of terror list in 2020, opening the door for badly needed foreign loans and investment. But the country's economy has struggled with the shock of a number of economic reforms called for the international lending institutions. It is to be recalled that Jeffrey Feltman, the U.S. Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa, met with Sudanese officials over the weekend in an effort to resolve the growing dispute between civilian and military leaders. The power seizure by the Sudan military remains to be a great concern for international institutions like the UN, Arab League, and the AU.
In connection to the Sudanese case, I'm now joined by Samuel Gutierrez for a conversation over the telephone. He's an independent journalist working worldwide. Let's talk about the political condition in Sudan. Thank you very much, Samuel, for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what is the current assessment on the political condition in Sudan after the removal of Abdullah Hamdok's administration?
We're only watching it from a distance, but from what we know, there has been, several deaths. At least 6 people have died so far. These are people who are protesting, in terms of what's happening, because they want the government that was previously, put in place in 2019 to come back, because there was so much hope. I also have to say that Ethiopia and the Prime Minister have indeed contributed in terms of having that coalition government that was supposed to transition Sudan to a democratic nation in a few years.
All right, Samuel. The Sudan's military leader, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, decided to dissolve the transitional cabinet and the sovereign council. What is expected to unfold in Sudan?
Well, he has also declared the state of emergency, which means that the police can make a decision anytime, including, the killings of everyday Sudanese people. So Sudan, an important nation with a population of close to 45 million people, can literally will have an uncertain future because, again, in the last few years since Mr. Haddock became prime minister, there has been certain reforms, including bringing the Sudan into the international community and also paying some of the debts that the country refused to pay in previous years. And the prime minister has called the military an old guard that wanted to bring back an old era that was literally rejected by the young people that protested in 2019 and brought the revolution that we all celebrated from a distance.
All right, Samuel Gutierrez, an independent journalist working worldwide, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
The statement from the government of Ethiopia on the current situation in the Sudan says the government of Ethiopia is closely following developments in the Sudan. This particularly emanates from the strong brotherly ties that have existed between the peoples of the two countries for centuries. The statement recalled that the Ethiopian government has played a significant role in successfully mediating the establishment of a coalition government consisting of its civilian and military components and to adopt the constitutional document of the transitional period. The government of Ethiopia therefore called on all parties for calm and de-escalation in the Sudan and to exert every effort towards a peaceful end to the crisis. In this regard, the government of Ethiopia fully supports the completion of Sudan's transition to democracy and the respect for the constitutional document of the transitional period.
ከጨንቻ ወደ ጅማ የሚሄድ ወደ ሀገረ ማርያም የሚሄድ ወደ ሸዋ የሚሄድ ሸዋ ምንለው አዲስ አበባ ነው የሚሄድ ነጋዴ ሁሉ እዚህ መጥቶ ነው እረፍት የሚያደርገው።
Welcome back. You're watching Addis News Hour. Some Western nations have opted to come to the extent of imposing sanctions on Ethiopia in the face of promising improvements in the country. Professor Mamo Muche made the remark in an interview with ETV. And as such, they're adding flames to the conflict in Ethiopia instead of being part of the solution, he added. Shifarao Lako has this report.
A rated research professor with the Department of Science and Innovation and the National Research Foundation, Mamo Muche is the South African Research Chair in Science, Technology and Innovation Studies at the Tshwane University of Technology in Pretoria, South Africa. In an exclusive interview with ETV, he asks as to why some Western nations opt to ignore the encouraging results in Ethiopia, which the burgeoning East African nation is registering.
There are two key issues that should be noted. There are forces in the West, from America, from the European Union, that are now saying sanctions must be imposed, all right, on Ethiopia. To this extent, they have come. I think the important point is what we should say now is that what we see in Ethiopia happening is that there is coronavirus, and it has affected the political process. Remember the election being postponed, and then that election being postponed. The Tigray People's Liberation Front said they will not postpone it, and then they did their own action. So what you have is a situation where there are difficulties like that, but at the same time, election has taken place.
Recalling the democratic election Ethiopia has recently achieved, he says the Western media and nations should have respected the will of the people of Ethiopia.
These external actors, what you call them white saviors, should not be imposing, on Ethiopia and threatening sanctions against Ethiopia. I think it doesn't go very well, because if the government that is elected by the people of Ethiopia, so we should, whatever we say at the moment, because of this, we should accept what's going on by the people, whether we like it or not, whether we like who is elected or not. The process, if the election process is done properly, then we should accept it.
The professor has also called on some elements and nations to stop and think before meddling in the sovereign internal affairs of Ethiopia.
Residents of Dessie and its environs are carrying out their daily activities without being distracted by the propaganda of the terrorist group. The vice chairman of the National Movement of the Amhara, Yusuf Ibrahim, has said that the elimination of the terrorist TPLF will now be just a matter of time. Kasahun Chani has more.
National Movement of Amhara senior leadership members, including the vice chairman, paid a visit to the community in Dessie and its environs. The vice chairman, Yusuf Ibrahim, said the invading and terrorist TPLF was spreading false information to terrorize Kombolcha, Dessie and its environs. According to the vice chairman, the public should understand the TPLF's lies and work with the National Defense Forces, the Amhara Special Forces and other security forces to make Wollo the burial ground of the invading force. He said the terrorist group has deployed several guerrilla forces in various parts of Afar and Amhara regions. Adding the clique was being beaten by the army, special forces, Fano and the farmers.
Now we are found at the town of Dessie. The National Defense Force, alongside regional forces and the Fano and farmers, are truly advancing to the TPLF group. But this group is running away to their region. And the youth are working aggressively with the defense force being hand in glove. Hence, the youth gathered from various areas of the region are playing their share to defeat TPLF.
He also said Ethiopian children are beating together this invading force, noting the youths are striving hard to dismantle and put TPLF's grave in Wollo. Gashau Mersha, head of Structural Affairs Division at National Movement of Amhara, on his part underscored that they have witnessed the performance of the National Defense Force, Special Forces, Fano and farmers to dismantle the TPLF group during the visit.
We have seen that the defense forces and the special forces of the Amhara and other regions, Fano and the militia, have prepared together to struggle in the areas where the TPLF force has entered into. To be sure, I believe that the TPLF grave would be witnessed here in the shortest time possible. With the terrorist group's false rumors and chaos, the community should not leave their home and property.
By the time now, the community of Dase and Ethiopians are carrying out their daily activities without being distracted by the propaganda of the terrorist group.